Welcome everyone, and today I am really thrilled to be speaking with Jeremy Damec, someone I've known. When did you reach out to me, Jeremy? Was it 2015?
It's of 2015, yeah, I think.
2015, yeah.
Wow.
Jeremy's been at this a while, doing the soul searching that a lot of y'all have done. And I'll tell you, it wasn't until about 2015, 2016, more like, where this field exploded and all kinds of people coming into it more and lots more trainers and things like that. And so, Jeremy, I would love for you to talk to us today. I don't, he has an extensive bio. I'll put some of it underneath the YouTube, but
Right.
you've just done so many wonderful things. And I want people to know you as a person. I want people to know you before you realized you wanted to be a doula, end-of-life doula. And of course, from that will come all the work that you've been doing. I want people to really see the humanity of our role and that we don't have to have all these designations and credentials to do really interesting and work that it fills our soul. And so, yeah, please get us started. And by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Deanna Cochran, and I mentor end-of-life practitioners and train healthcare professionals and lay people on the art of accompanying the dying and building a practice. So, Jeremy, thank you for joining me today. And tell us, like, who are you?
Who am I?
Who
Well,
are you? What's going on? What happened before doula? What was going on in your life?
what happened before doula? If I go all the way back to the very beginning of what happened with doula, is I was born as a replacement child.
Oh,
So my brother died 3 months almost to the day I was born. And I realized he was born with significant health issues, so he wasn't expected to live. Um, so I was born into a very much a grieving family. So I believe I experienced everything my mother was experiencing because I was still in the womb. And there's some studies about that, and I've done some
mm.
my own work around being a replacement child um, and what that means. And it really wasn't until I turned 50 actually that I really began to explore. 50 seemed to be a magic number because he was never talked about in our family openly. And I found out about my brother from a neighbor while I was playing, was I think 7 or 8. And that's when I went home and asked my mom, and that's when she sat down and talked to me about my brother Joel. Um, so that for me, I feel like that was definitely my entryway. I was kind of born into this work, is how I feel. In that. And so, um, and then fast forward to 2009 when my mom was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And I was suddenly thrown into literally into her caretaking role at home, my brother and I. And she lived 10 days after her diagnosis, for 10 days after her diagnosis, and she died. But I had no idea what I was doing. I was just told this was the medication I was supposed to give her. Um, and we made it work. And so it still took, there was Hurricane Odile here in Mexico. And that's somehow in after the hurricane, I'm working in the communities that were devastated because it was a major hurricane
In
uh,
Mexico.
in Mexico here in Baja, where I live with my husband. In Baja California Sur in 2014, um, it was after that I began to wonder about working with the dying. And so that's how I reached out to you. I reached out to Sarah Kerr. I reached out to a few different people. And then I reached out to Dr. Megory Anderson. And so she was the person that got me on this path. I know you and I had spoken once, and then I had spoken once or twice with Sarah Kerr, but it was Dr. Megory Anderson, who has since died. Um, and that was, it all came full circle. So I came back to you in 2020. I believe it was during the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I reached out to you and I wanted to complete the course with you because I felt like you were the person that I wanted to complete that course with accompanying the dying.
Thank you.
And so that is, that's kind of a short version of how I came into this, but I feel like I look back now that it was always part of who I was. Whether it's being gay or whatever, is very sensitive to and in tune. Um, and I have three older brothers. And so I've been able to really work in this field. I worked with children in elementary school in San Francisco for a long time, um, as a counselor. And so my work kind of shifted into end of life work, which I find very gratifying, and grief work. It's funny.
Wow. So you were a counselor. Where did you go to school?
I went to I started, where did I go to school? A few different schools. I'll just say I got my master's degree from University of San Francisco.
Okay, yeah. So you've been working with children, and then once you started delving more into end of life and really committing to that, then you began your end of life grief work.
Yes. Uh-huh. And
Well, tell
then
us about how that went. Like, well, first, before we go there, I really like to dig in a little bit about what propelled you, because a lot of people have the idea they would love to do something like this, but they don't take action. So tell me what made you flip the switch and go, you know what, I am gonna move forward with it. What happened with Meggery, was it some work y'all did together, or
no, there was this. I was sitting at home one day and it was this calling suddenly. Like I can't
okay.
explain it. Like it was suddenly this voice inside of me, or this feeling inside of me was, hey, you should explore end of life work or working with the dying. I had no idea where to look. So I sat and I Googled and I just started to pull up. You came up, Sarah came up,
Okay, that's how it happened.
you
You
came
were
up.
just sitting there.
I was sitting there and I was like, wow, this is strong. Does anyone else do this work? Because this is something I want to do. And that's how I really came into the work. And maybe it was part of what we went through with the hurricane and what happened afterwards. It was intense.
Oh.
So maybe it made me really question life and how to be of support to those that are nearing the end of their life. Maybe, I don't know. It's a weird. I just remember like it was a flash.
That's
Like,
what happens, Jeremy. I can't tell you how many times people say that. It's the same with me when I thought of it. In 2005, my mom had just died. And the big aha that came to me was, oh, I could be like those birth midwives were to me. I had a home birth in 1991, and they did so much healing with me. It was incredible how they shifted our whole trajectory of life. And so when my mom died, I'm like, is this, like I just never heard of anything. I said, I want to be the end of life counterpart to the birth midwife. And so
exactly.
you thought the same, you were like, I want to do that. And then you did that's what I did. I did a search. And back then, 1998, I think the internet was,
Right.
my ex-husband came home and said, there's this thing called the internet. And I'm like, oh, and then 2005, I'm looking on this internet thing, not sure what I'm doing.
Right. As we all were.
Right? Oh, Jeremy, I'm so happy that happened to you that way. That's so good. It happens to everyone that way.
Well, and I think part of the interesting part of that too is I also worked as a psychic medium. And so I was doing lots of readings for people and also, working as a medium, um, with while my mom was sick, but also, I was addicted to crystal meth, I'll be completely honest, at one point in my life. And so I decided that wasn't working anymore. And so it was 2 years before I got clean or I stopped, and my mom died 2 years later. So I was glad that I could be there for her in the way I was, because I heard stories from guys when I was going to the support group I was going to, that they'd found out while they were high that parents had died or people had
Oh,
died. And so
yeah, yeah,
my heart goes out to them because there's a lot of guilt.
yeah, yeah.
And so there's a lot of work that has been done around that too. So I kind of have a life story of lots of things.
I know. That's why I wanted to talk to you. You're so rich. I'm so grateful I've gotten to know you over the years in a variety of contexts. So Okay, so you came in and now are you in San Francisco doing this work or you're down in the Mexico doing the work?
I'm in Mexico doing the work, and I'm really trying to work it on an online platform, which is a little more difficult. Just I will tell people, and I worked at a funeral home. I went back in 2018 to San Francisco, and I finished a chaplaincy program at SF General Hospital, and then I went and I worked at a funeral home for a year and a half, and then I stopped once the pandemic really became big, and I came back to Mexico. But I'm really into home funerals and natural burials, and so for me, I thought, if I'm going to do that work, I need to understand what the other side is. And so I learned so much I loved my job at the funeral home. It was like, talk about coming home, quote unquote, to a place where you feel incredibly comfortable, and it feels so natural. And so I worked with great people and I learned so much there. Um, and it was very formative for me in my learning around what happens. I was able to witness embalmings.
Mm.
I was able to see people in all different states of how they came into the funeral home. Um, so I really learned all the in and outs of the funeral home and was able to, to be part of all of that because I really wanted to. And I felt that that was really important for me because I really do feel home funerals are really a thing
Yeah.
for me personally. I mean, not to, everyone has their own choice around how they want to, with their end of life wishes and after they die. But for me, there's something very sacred about home funerals and being at home.
Why don't you talk to us a little bit? Because there'll be people watching this that don't know anything about what in the world a home funeral is. Do you want to give us just a couple minutes of
Yeah,
what you're finding and stuff? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. No, so I mean, so at the funeral home, right? So there's embalming that happens at the funeral home. Um, and so you're placed in the cooler or, and then you're embalmed and then you're ready for viewing for the family. And it can be 2 or 3 days, sometimes 4, depending on the family. Um, but home funerals for me are very intimate. So for me, it's the body is cared for at home. And so embalming can be an option, which generally is not kind of how home funerals go. But I talked to one funeral director and they talked about a home funeral and how they had to embalm. And I was kind of coming at it from a different direction.
Yeah.
So for me, home funerals, it's if you die at home or wherever you die, you're brought home and you're at home so that family and friends can come and sit vigil. It's usually 2 to 3 days, depending. Um, just an example with our cat, when she died, I had her at home for 24 hours, and created a little place for her with candles. But I didn't have any dry ice, so I bought peas, right? So lots of frozen peas in the freezer and placed them under the blanket so that she would stay nice and cold. And I turned the air conditioning down to 60 so that, and thankfully I mentioned it to the, cause she was, the vet had to come because she was so sick. And so he administered the life ending drugs. And he said, a good thing I asked him because he said those tend to cause the body to deteriorate much faster.
Oh,
So I didn't know that, right? So I think so there's these things that we can do that if you don't have dry ice available, you can do frozen corn or frozen
sure.
peas.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
the idea is to hold vigil and that you can create your own ceremony at home and it's can be far cheaper and much less than the cost of a funeral home because I saw the cost when I worked there and people would spend tens of thousands of dollars. They go broke,
Yeah.
right? Or go into debt around because this is what they thought they had to do. And there's a different way to do it. And I'm passionate about that because there is a different way. And I've told my husband, I said, if possible, I'd like to be at home, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and friends can come and whenever that happens. But that people can come and just take their time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that experience with my dear friend Glenn, who died from pancreatic cancer at home. But he died early in the morning. I showed up at 5 a.m. But family and friends were coming throughout the whole day. He was still in
Mm-hmm.
his bed in his bedroom. And I think for me, there is such a beauty, and it's mystical, right? The
Mm-hmm.
death, the dying process, but also after the soul leaves the body, if you believe in a soul, the body changes. And it was remarkable how his body changed from early morning to afternoon and evening when the funeral home came to transfer him to the funeral home. But just and I opened the door to let his spirit free, and left it open for the day. But I think there's a beauty in all of this, that it causes us to slow down. It can force us to slow down and really be present with what is happening here and now. And I believe in that so much, because it's taking the time to honor what is happening, because what is happening is is profound, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a mystical experience if we allow it to be, in whatever way that means for us. It's different for different people and different religions,
Mm-hmm.
but just a profoundness in watching and being with and
Mm-hmm.
talking to the person you love, that it's now their body, but you're still sitting there talking to them and thanking them for the friendship, for the love, for everything they've offered. Um, and the same thing with Megri, when she was in hospice. I think if we allow and this is the beauty of this work, and this is for all the people out there that are thinking about doing this work. I think this just speaks to, it causes all of us, we don't have a choice but to be in that liminal space, to slow down and to be fully present with what is happening here and now. Because we're in this world that is so coming at us and so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
constantly. And this is that space. The beauty of that space is just to be fully present.
Mm. Slow down time a little bit, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and just to, and to just experience,
Mm-hmm.
just to take it in and to be part of, because we're so removed from life cycles, and especially death and grief, that you get 3 days off.
So tell us what you moved into. So, and y'all, whoever's interested in home funerals, there's so much out there about it. So you can go to the National Home Funeral Alliance website, and you'll see so much
Yeah,
teaching there. Just
so
look
much.
up YouTube. You'll see so many examples, so many real people having home funerals that have filmed
And
it.
lots of documentaries out there that are so
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
You type it in on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and type in.
Yeah, so y'all, this is a beautiful thing, and Jeremy, I did told my kids as well. I want a home funeral. There are home funeral guides here in Austin, of course, and so that's what I would love, and I would love that especially for them. And I don't know if they really get that yet, but I do. I get
Yeah,
it. I know,
we do get
you
it.
know.
Like,
So
I
and
don't know
it's
if my husband quite gets it, but I'm like, this will
I
you'll understand it more maybe when it
it's like
happens.
I want them to have the maximum chance of integration and healing, and the home funeral provides that, in my opinion, from everything I've seen and read and heard and been a part of. So yeah, okay. Well, so tell us now. So what is it that you chose to go into, and a little bit of why, maybe?
Well, my work has shifted more into grief work.
Okay.
So I just received a grief coaching certificate, and
Okay.
I'm my counseling background.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing grief counseling work for about 8 years, 7, 8 years, around there, I guess now. Think about it. I have a great clinical supervisor, Sarah Luderman. She's awesome, and so my work has really moved into the grief realm, and I still do work like with the client that I just worked with through Care Doula. program with Brian Moffat, who died
with
from
our grief companion program. So
right
tell us about, did they allow you to talk about what you went through?
with Brian, or yeah, no, I mean, it was more the hope was that we could kind of review his end of life, right? I don't know if there was so much grief. I think obviously there's grief around dying and death.
He
Um,
was more doing life review with you,
yeah,
like,
it was more, and he was ready, and he was.
mhm.
If there was
Okay,
anyone that was ready, he said, he'd done the work, and he was good with everyone.
nice.
So there wasn't a whole lot, and I think my experience with this that was unique for me was to watch the decline because we weren't on video, we were on the phone. So when I started with him in May, he could still speak, but as time went on, it became more difficult to understand him.
Yeah, yeah,
And so our sessions became like 5 minutes and just
yeah,
checking,
yeah, yeah.
and then just reminding him of the legacy that he's leaving behind because of all the work he did for MAID in New York State, trying to get that passed, which unfortunately wasn't passed, but he did everything he could.
Yeah.
Uh, and he died, I think, a week ago today,
Hmm.
maybe 2 weeks ago, I think. And so his son has been out talking about it, and
Mm-hmm.
if you can look him up on, he's on statenislandlive.com. If you type him in,
We'll
they
put
did
his we'll put his information
Yeah.
below
They
so
did a
that
whole
way
piece on
people.
him. So he was really out there and vocal as best he could. What I loved about him the most, he was a warm, loving human being, but his focus was to make things better for people that were in his situation so they could have a choice.
So what was his message? So let's tell everybody, like, honor him by what was his work that he was doing in his dying that was so important.
Was that he was meeting with legislature in New York State around meeting with them. They were coming to meet with him around getting MAID passed in New York.
Okay, medical aid and dying.
No,
Okay,
dinosaur, yes.
that's okay.
I know the lingo. We know the lingo,
Oh,
but
I know, but there's people that will watch that
right,
don't know. Yeah,
exactly. So,
very
no,
good.
medical aid and dying. So he was really trying to get that passed. And then I offered other options for him
Hmm.
along the way, and I don't know if those quite happened, but VSED was one.
Right, voluntary stop eating and drinking, y'all.
Right.
It's called
Well,
VSED. You can look that up. Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
and so that was another option. And then so we talked about that. And so and that was something that he was going to do, but I don't know if he did that because then he died.
Uh-huh.
So
Right, right, right. I mean, that's the thing, Jeremy. I just want to quickly let people know. People often are looking for support as someone they love is dying. Also, grief support, bereavement support. And if you go to certifiedcaredoula.com, look at our grief care program, and it's free. We just ask for a small donation for admin stuff, but um, yeah, look that up because there's not anything like free one-to-one sessions over time anywhere that I've seen. That's why we started that. And um, see, the thing I never expected is that people who were actually dying would want that. I always thought it was just going to be the caregivers and survivors. We've had several people that were dying come in. So you're right. If the person is coming to you as dying, you're not going to be able to know what's going on because you were talking to them, and they lose their energy, and
right.
you'll lose connection with them. Yeah.
And I think there's also like acknowledging that anticipatory grief. Like we don't talk about
Yes.
that a lot.
Right. There's not a lot out there about that. Did he talk about that?
A little bit. I think he was good. He was really good
Good.
for that. His son was good. Like I was open with his son. Like the three of us had very open conversations, and it was, Brian was very clear about what he wanted. And he said, my son knows everything. There's nothing to hide. So this is, what I say to you, you can say to him. So I would just check in with his son, via WhatsApp, just to let him know I spoke to your dad today and this is what we talked about. And it
Well,
was all,
in honor of him, we'll have his information underneath this as well, so y'all can support the family however they would like. So you started doing, so you're back in Mexico doing grief work then, after the pandemic and everything?
yeah, so I came back here and I'm doing grief work online. And then I'm also a colleague of mine who you know, Tracy Corey. So we've created Death and Grief Worker Collective.
Oh, say that again.
Death and Grief Worker Collective.
And we'll have that down below as well.
And so that is really, our focus was to really bring death and grief workers together in a way that, because we all need to continue to have a support system and also just a place where we can continue to maybe learn about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be isolating once we move
Mm-hmm.
out into our communities and do our work, then we can begin to feel like, oh, there's no one else out here.
Mm-hmm.
So we came together and created Death and Grief Worker Collective so that it's a place for trainings,
Nice.
for meeting up. And we have a website, deathandgriefworkercollective.com.
Nice.
And so our hope is we have a new a course coming up that we did this past spring, late winter, spring, which was cultivating compassion and community.
Oh, wow. You and Tracy created it?
Uh-huh. And
fantastic.
So 5 week course, we've condensed it down a little more so that it's more condensed. So just coming and really exploring kind of in a Buddhist way, how we bring what we bring to our work and how we do that for ourselves, for our families, and just exploring that we really have no control over anything, which can feel really scary.
I know, isn't that the truth?
But just a space where we can talk about that and to explore. And there's 5 lessons that go with it, and it's all provided, and the recordings are provided along the way. We record each session. So, and then we have a new course coming up in October is Boundaries in Death and Grief Work.
Nice.
So,
nice.
So kind of thinking about, because we're helpers, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is those boundaries can get blurred because we want to do, and so it's more of a living, breathing organism around how we work to take care of ourselves, while we're also offering support for the communities or the people we serve.
Nice, very nice.
And
very
so
nice.
Kind of understanding it's okay to have boundaries, because I think we can often forget. I know I do.
Yeah.
That because we want to help, right? We see a need and we want to fill that need for somebody, because that's who we are, and that's a lot of times what this work is. And so just honoring ourselves within the work and how we can show up and take care of ourselves.
Well, yeah, because it's always like the way I used to look at it, and I still do. I think I still tend to do this, is I'm not dying right now. And if nobody in my family's dying right now, if I know you're dying, you trump me. Your needs trump mine. And so talk about a death worker, that happens every day. So what happens to me, right? And what happens to you as the death worker? So it's not that kind of thing anymore when you're professionally as a death worker. It can't be they trump you every time. They cannot be that way, because otherwise there'll be nothing left of us. And so it's not a mean thing or selfish thing. It's very necessary to nourish. People want us nourished so that we can then be present for you.
Exactly.
And I cannot take on every single thing that comes my way, or every single aspect of care of a family that comes my way, if I can't. And so I'm so grateful you all are coming with that course.
Yeah, and I think that's what we realize too in the work. It's like, if you've got 2 or 3 clients, I mean, I don't know how people can do it, but if you've got even 2 clients and you're working with them, they require a lot. So what is the space? How do we operate within that space so that as you said, our vessel needs to be filled, or at least more than half filled, so we can show up for the people that we're serving and being of service to in our death and grief work. Because if not, then it's kind of like just putting out fires, or there's
Well, what it
so
is you talk to any hospice nurse, we can do it. Okay,
yeah,
we can do it, but
definitely.
you will be dragging. You will
Yeah.
be dragging. It doesn't take long to be dragging emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in every kind of way if we don't do the nourishment. And as end of life doulas and death workers in private practice, we do have the control to do that. In organizations, healthcare, home health, hospice, they don't give you the time to do that. But here, when you're creating your own practice, I always say, do not create your practice as another healthcare role. Might as well go work in healthcare. If you're going to create a private practice, nourish yourself. You have to be the center, the hub of well-being, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked at 3 different hospitals in San Francisco, and let me tell you, like, it's important to really know. I've seen a lot of it, right? I've been in lots of different situations in the hospital, and even at the funeral home. It's like you need to pace yourself, because every family that comes in, it's a new grief. And if you don't pace yourself with each family, because oftentimes people would ask me, how do you do this work? It must be so depressing. And I said, well, I show up for the family. I said, I hold space for the family and do my best to be sure that their experience, their journey here at the funeral home, it will continue afterwards. But my focus is that what I can offer them here at the funeral home is a place where they can feel heard, seen, and listened to. Sure, did I take some of that home with me? Yes, most definitely. But then you
Well,
find a
well,
way.
talk to us, Jeremy, about what you do. What do you do to keep yourself in a nourishment kind of a place? And um,
I have a
so,
little garden on my balcony that I grow. We have 2 cats um, that I love all over. My husband and I love all over too. But I do. I've meditation is really important, or at least some kind of quiet time, or it could be prayerful. I have an altar in the room that I'm in behind me, where all my ancestors are. I talk to them regularly, and I ask for guidance. Um, because sometimes the work can be really, and sometimes it's colleagues too, like colleagues like you or other, that we just have to talk about what's going on.
mhm,
This was a really hard client,
mhm,
and that's why I have a clinical supervisor. Like,
mhm.
this client is really, it's challenging, and I'm trying to do the best I can to offer the support, but it's really hard, and I don't know where to go always. I'm much better at it now, but so it's about finding sometimes outside resources, you
Right,
know,
right,
also within our own communities, colleagues that we can connect with.
yeah.
Like, if you don't have that, then try and create that. Maybe once a month you meet in a group, obviously confidential, but you talk about, what's going on, so that you feel supported, because that's a huge piece of it. Because if we're not feeling supported, um, then we just hold on to it all, and it just
And that's key. I'm glad you're bringing this up. So any person that's considering coming into end of life doula professional service, you have to have community. So you might not be in a school such as ours where we have community with each other. And even though we have community with each other and you can come into the group and all of that and always talk and people always come in with their clients and stuff, you still need more sometimes. Like you're off on a specialized path. So, Jeremy, you've created another community. You've got other people. Like we all should have that, not just one, but have many communities all around to support you in the work because you're not backed by an organization. You're not backed by a license or a licensed role. You are self created and your role is brand new. And when I didn't even know you were doing that course, but why I love that you're doing that course is you're going to help people have boundaries around this it can be a chaotic role if you don't have a clear boundary around it. So I hope
Exactly.
people will come and go to that course and come to your website and look at it, because not everybody's going to be certified as a doula, and not every doula program has support, and it's just is what it is. And so there'll be a lot of people, even therapists need support.
Yeah,
You're a therapist. We all need support.
that's why, as a counselor, yeah, that's why I have a clinical supervisor when things get heated, or hot with a client, not heated, but when it gets difficult to kind of like, I need some guidance, as we all do, and the work we do, like she's my go-to.
Yes.
Book a
And
session with
I
her.
like that. And I mean that. I mean it that way. It's not just a buddy to talk to. There's a lot of people on the journey together, and everybody's just as lost as each other. I have a mentor. I call it a posse. I have a few people that I go to that, if you want to say above me, more enlightened than me, have more skills than me, have been on the journey longer than me, however you want to frame it, I look up to and I
Yeah.
can turn to, and they help me. And I need that because I'm helping all kinds of people also build up and learn who they are. And every single person that's listening to this, please don't feel inadequate if you can't hang on your own. You're not supposed to, not in this.
Because I was thinking about this the other day, and this is an example of like how death, even grief, I was thinking part of this I was thinking about is how it was so part of the community. And there was always so much support built in. You had the people that went when someone was dying in the community, and they helped with the family, and they helped with the dying person, and they helped take care of, and you had the person that built the coffin. It was all organized in a way. And so we've been so separated from that
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day of how we just bring that all back together, because we are a community. And the beauty of that is that we're taking care of our own, right?
Yeah.
In that way, that is really special, is specialized. Because not everyone can do this work. And I think that's really
Mhm.
important to really highlight, is that not everyone, it's a calling.
Yes.
This work calls you, you don't call it.
Right. Not many people call it that I've ever met. I
Right.
don't think I've met anybody that calls it.
Because I always joke with people, I said, if I'm at a cocktail party and I start talking about my work, either they're interested or they excuse themselves to go to the bathroom and never come back.
And never come back.
So
No,
it's
and so many people will say, I feel macabre, I feel weird, I can't say how joyful I feel serving the dying. And say, you can talk about that with me. Yes. That's how we feel. We feel honored and joyful that we can help at a time like this.
I mean, I feel more alive working with dead people, with the dying, or even dead people, or with families or grieving people. There's this energy that, I mean, some people may think it sounds weird. And I was joking with my clinical supervisor one day, but I said, I like getting into the nitty gritty and really exploring what that is for people, because it's going to happen to all of us one way
Yeah.
or another,
And how many people have someone to talk to? That's the thing. I
Right.
think that's where a lot of my joy comes in, was when I see somebody exhale. When I see somebody exhale, I know they're getting relief, they're feeling heard. And that's what makes me happy, is that wherever somebody is that's suffering with the burden of it, it takes a while usually for people to consider it sacred. Like not everybody gets faced with their death or the death of someone they love a lot and go, oh, it's time for sacred dying. Like that's
Right.
not how people do it.
Um,
It can turn into that for sure. And most of us that work in this feel that way
yeah.
about the whole thing. But when it's happening to us and I'm losing my loved one, I might see it as the grand thing of total beautiful portal experience and all of that. But believe me, I'm going through it,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think also, like, one other piece of really important, maybe wisdom or information to share too, is like, we can plan out what we want our death to look like, right? Our dying to look like. But when we get there, it's going to be very different than what we put
Often it
in
is.
paper or what. And I think that's really important for all of us in this work and with our family members, to consider and to think about, is that it's like as a friend of mine had said, it's like planning a trip to Paris, right? You've got all these great, and then when you get there, the trip is going to be different because when you get there, Paris is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's like, so I think that's really important too, is like it's a moving, living, it's its own living being organism. It's amorphous, it shifts and changes like grief does. As we grow into our grief, we grow into our dying, and it's going to change as we change. And I think those are really important, maybe tenets or a foundation to work from, to know that these things are always changing. They're never static.
They're never static. And my new thing of the day, you know, how in our evolution as human beings, how we, I capture a thing that I work with a while, an energy that I work with a while. And the energy I'm working with right now is relaxing into. You just said grow into. That's awesome. Right now I'm relaxing into everything and seeing how that feels. And it is different. It's like a meditation, like a new meditation for the moment. And then we'll see what my next one is, right?
Right.
It's like, I think this work draws us, the people that draws are people naturally on some kind of path. You have to be on this. You can't not take care of yourself or not be aware of the broader realm of where you fall in it. I'm not saying people have to be spiritual.
Right.
I don't at all, but I know that each person into this that I talk to has some kind of path where they nourish themselves.
And that's really important. And what I like about what can be really uneasy about this work, I've learned, is that it's stepping into the unknown, not
Mhm.
knowing. So it's becoming comfortable with what we don't know, because we don't know what's going to happen next when someone's dying or in grief. We don't know what that's going to be like, because we have to step into that place that's really uncomfortable. So this really calls us to a place of being open
Yeah,
and to be present with what is uncomfortable a lot of times, and being able to be with that and not judging that. I think
yeah,
it's a big piece of that, because we can get into a judgment mode
yeah.
around, oh, well, it should be this way, or why isn't it happening this way, or why aren't you like getting better, or blah, blah, whatever it could be, right?
Whatever. Yeah,
It's a place of non-judgment. It's a place of
yeah.
openness. It's a place of being present and allowing what's going to unfold to unfold.
I think the saddest thing that one of the saddest things, I'm sure there's a lot of sad things, but one of the saddest things that I've heard lately, a few people that I know are going through dying, is that the family members, some of them say, oh, we know they're giving up. We know they're giving up. It's like, no, they're dying. They're not giving. It's not that they're willfully giving up their life and dying, though people can do that.
Right.
I'm not talking about suicide. People can willfully meditate themselves out of here. But they think that because their person is dying, that they're actually giving up. So that it needs a tenderness as well to walk them through that. But and so one of the people that is going through it right now, she said, I talked to each person and said, I'm going to try, this treatment. And if it doesn't work, I'm not doing it anymore. But it's not, I'm only basing on if do I feel good. As
Right.
long as I feel good, I'm gonna do it. But if not, I'm not giving up. I'm just not gonna not feel good.
Right. And I,
you know?
I have a family member who's going through some stuff right now, and they decided not to do anything, and whatever that is for them.
Are they getting flack for that, or are people upset
They
about
just
that?
decided, like, I think the doctors were like, well, we suggest this, and this family member is like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. And so for me, it's to honor and respect that space.
Absolutely. That's
This is
what
your
I'm trying to
journey,
say. Yeah.
this is your
Yeah.
journey. I love you, and I will support you through whatever this is for you, whatever the outcome is. But know
Right.
that this is all up to you. And I think this is, we get so caught up, because part of it, we're going to talk a little bit about ego and about how our connection to the people we love, because we don't want the people we love to die necessarily. But it comes to a place of you're not giving up. And if you are giving up, guess what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's your choice. Like there's no, I've seen when people don't give up, what that looks like. And it is horrific.
But again, that's their choice, right?
Right,
So,
it's their choice. And I had to sit with that and be really comfortable with that choice and watching what was happening
well,
to them.
as doulas, we have to, y'all. If you're a doula, you can come into it knowing that, like one of the biggest things I have to help people overcome very quickly after coming into the school is to let go of the idea that you're going to make things better. So that's the very thing that we come in to do. And it's the very thing we have to let go of. Because with us being around, there is a higher probability that things will be better because we're taking over things, we're being their backbone, we have their back, we get to help them take care of us, they get to relax into their relationships, like all kinds of things happen that could possibly better things. But if we come in with the objective of making things better, there's a pressure in that. And they can feel that. Right?
And that's so true. Yeah, absolutely. I came into that with a friend thinking I knew all this information, right? I'm here to help. I'm here to, and it wasn't wanted.
Right.
And so that was also like my lesson in ego and my lesson in a hard pill to swallow around. I know how to help you, right?
It's for all of us, Jeremy. It is. It's all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
And now I go into things very differently.
Yeah.
I go
I'm sure.
very, very differently now because I was yelled at by my friend, my dear friend.
Yeah.
And I got it, I understood it and it was okay. But I think that's it is like it's about letting go. It's kind of, I don't want to use cliche phrases, but it's like, it's allowing what will be, allowing what will unfold to show up before us. And then we can move with it. I always say, I feel like it's a dance.
It is a dance.
Like this work is a dance. Grief work, death work is a dance with the people we're working with because I always think of them as they're the main actor or actress.
And they're the lead.
Right? And we're
the lead.
We're all supporting actresses and actors and they're telling us, they're directing the show. And it's for us to let go of our own stuff so that we can show up and be fully present for that.
Jeremy, what are you going to be focusing on now? Is it the grief collective that you and Tracy are doing? Is there something else you're focusing on as well?
I'm working at building my grief clientele, my own personal practice. So I'm doing that right now too. So I have my website is Jeremy Death and Grief.
We'll put that down there.
Yeah, I'll have all that. Yeah. So that and along with the Death and Grief Worker Collective.
With
doing
wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, I've done some memorial services. So I also do.
Oh, okay.
And some celebrant work along the way. So I've done a lot, I guess. Yeah.
I was thinking, my work is more on, if you want to say the international level, which used to sound important back in the day before internet, but basically it's just people from different countries, right? But I really, ever since, even though I do work with people all around, so maybe not me right now, maybe me later, but I really think it's important, y'all, to build local community and local service because it's great if you find out about someone like me and you study with me and you live in another country or you live across the states. That's fine. But I think most people should work and live and train with people locally if you can.
Yeah.
I just feel the energy when you're present and connected and you show up at each other's house, have some coffee. That's so important. So important. We're so lonely out here. We're so isolated out here.
And part of that, I oftentimes feel like, like, am I a freak? I mean, for lack of a better word. I mean, I
Yeah.
use that word, but sometimes it feels like because people don't always understand what you're doing per se, and they wonder why you're interested in this work.
Well, that's why I'm saying the international front
Mm.
is good on some level because you have us and you don't have to have anybody next door or even in the next
Right.
town. A lot of people don't have anybody nearby. So the international group is important. That I know that in our school it is. But
Mhm.
outside of that, I think that people should be earnestly, intentionally, sincerely creating some
Yeah.
kind of locals for yourself and people that you want to work with, depending on what you want to do. But like I'm looking into that myself right now. How do I want to build local support for me? Not for other doulas. They're fine. Other doulas are all over Austin. They're amazing. They got their groups and everything. Me, I want local for me.
Mhm.
So y'all as doulas, think about yourself. We come into this thinking about them and everybody else, and that's just our heart. I think we're one of the last people we think about.
Yep.
And so I just encourage all of y'all, anybody, well, I'm looking at Jeremy, I'm gonna try, okay. Uh, where is everyone?
Right.
Look at yourself. Come into this if your heart's drawing you, but keep yourself at the forefront of your development, because without you there's nothing. It's like we're like the chefs have their knives, right? And their art. Everybody has the player has the violin. We are the violin. We are the tool. We are the biggest tool. So we have to finesse ourselves, rest, sharpen, you know, nurture everything, time, slow time for ourselves, so that
Right.
we are on. So when we're on, we are there and not wiped out.
Exactly. And the other thing I would add to that is compensation. It's
Oh, okay.
important to be compensated for the work you do because you want to feel like you don't want to feel like you're being underpaid. I think that's really important because we come into this work because we're givers, right? We want to help, and then we don't know quite how to charge for that because we're helping, and it feels can
It's
feel
a hard one for a lot of people to
a hard
cross
one.
that.
But
Yeah.
I think it's in, I know people that have really set their clear packages online and they've done their thing. It's I always say it's okay to charge a little more. You can always come down. Like, hey, I'm here to like offer if a family can't afford what the fee is, I'm here for it. Like we'll work it
Yeah,
out.
every doula does that. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
But have a set fee about this is, because if you go low, you can't really go high. And then if you don't want to be angry and feel resentful that, you're doing all the work
You
and
know
then
what
not
we ought to
getting
have is maybe I'll have a panel of experienced doulas and we'll just talk about the money issue and how people broke into it, how they dealt with their own issues around it, and how they charge and all of that kind of thing. I think that'd be an amazing panel. So would you come back for that?
come back for that. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah,
I
yeah, it
started
is.
off, yeah, I started off at a low, like I was afraid to charge too much. And now I realize, no, like we are worth what we charge, right? And if we're charging a low fee, then we're going to be angry and resentful. But if we just think a little higher about what we can charge within that, not something out of, crazy,
Well,
but
there's a
within,
lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes
right,
into figuring out how much you want to charge and stuff. There's like a good pathway that I believe in, because what people end up coming into is their own self-worth issues, their
right,
own self-value issues.
exactly,
And then also the altruism that runs so deep in so many of us, most of us, that,
right,
okay, how am I going to cross that line? And then, well, what about if people can't afford me? And so that was my first line, is what about if people can't afford me? So I think I always say, stay in your living room, try to, don't stay in your living room. It's that So how does it benefit anybody if I don't come out because I'm afraid, how am I going to deal with people I don't have money? It's just a crazy circle.
Right.
So I made it from the very beginning, and I didn't know how it was going to come out. I didn't know how it was going to how it was going to fall. But I said, I'm going to serve everybody, no matter if they have money or not. What I found out along the way is that we're not an entitlement to most people. Most people, I've not heard anybody that felt I was an entitlement. They are so grateful to know I'm there, whether they have money or not. And what people will tell me if they say, oh, I can't afford that, I have a way that I present everything I'm doing. So it's not a big deal for me to say, well, can I still come by and help you? And let's see what we can get done. And I would say 9 out of 10, they'll say, no, wait a minute, let me call you back. And somebody has said in their circle or whatever, call me if you need anything, because they're calling me and somebody else is paying for me, even though I was willing to come out there for free. So I think people have that mentality more than anything else, is that they value you. They value what you're doing, Jeremy. They value what I'm doing, and they want to give to you. It is an energetic exchange that they want to do. And I think it's a journey of a doula to get, it can be pretty messy to get through.
Yeah,
Some
and I
people are clear, but some aren't.
right, and I always think of it this way: is my fee? I'm always going to do more than what my fee is going
Oh
to be,
yeah, of
because
course.
that's just going to be what that's going to be, and I'm okay with that. But at least if I set a fee that I'm comfortable with, I know
Yes,
I'm going to go beyond that. Like there's no question,
exactly.
right?
Yes,
But at least
exactly.
I know I feel good about,
Well, it's this too, y'all. It's Jeremy, Deanna, you, whatever, whoever your name is, you are you, and you bring you everywhere. And that's not for sale. Okay. Me, my love, my extra mile, the what I want to do for a situation, that's not what they're paying for. What they're paying for is something very practical that I'm doing. And that's how I asked doulas to frame it, is to what is the practical element that you're bringing. You charge for that, but you're bringing yourself and your spiritual self and your loving self, and that part is priceless.
yeah. And it's always going to be more than it's always going to be more than what
Any fee, yeah,
right and what you've outlined, because it's
yeah.
impossible to just, oh well, you paid for this, I'm not going to do that, because that's not what's going to happen, because of course you're going to show up at 2 a.m. or you're going to take a
Well, not
call.
everybody. No, not everybody. So the whole thing around fees and what you're going to do and all of that kind of stuff is so individual. But you're so right on the money about right on the money. You're so right on about that. However, you're going to do this, if you're going to, I don't care how people, if you pay, get paid, don't get paid, volunteer, create a collective, have an organization, I don't care how anybody manifests it. However you manifest it, we'll figure it out. But the people that are having a professional practice, I believe strongly in that you create your own practice doing the things that you want to do. And if you don't want to do certain things, and you don't want to come at night, and you don't want to do vigil, and you don't do it.
Right,
There's other
exactly.
people that will do it. And people go, well, how would anybody want to hire me if I don't do vigil? Or why would anybody hire me if I'm not in the middle of the night? They will, because the thing is, when somebody's going through end of life, there's so many things to address.
Yes,
And then we can figure out how you want to help address that with your service. I don't
exactly.
go out in the middle of the night anymore. I
Yeah.
used to do middle of the night. I used to do all night. I used to do days. I would sometimes be there 3 and 4 days. And I don't do that anymore because of just my physical issues and stuff. I have to be in bed at night and wake up in the morning. So if they need overnight care, then I'm going to help them get that. But it's not going to be me.
Right. And that wouldn't be me either. I mean, I would take a phone call at night probably, or two, if there was an emergency, I might show up. But yes, that's me, right? That's where I would go. Or if a client calls.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to be that night person because they're night owls.
And
It's
I'm not
so,
that person.
I'm not that person either, but there are people that they've told me, when you have a case and you have a family, I want to be that person. Whatever you can't do, I want to do.
Oh,
And I
see?
bet, Jeremy, there's a lot of people that want to help you. Y'all out there, just know when people, if you're getting out here, just know that as you come out and people find out you're doing this work, they're going to say, I want to help you. And if you need help, call me. And you'll be a mentor to them. So this is very much a role that keeps giving, that it'll never end. It'll never end. Jeremy, you're going to have so many people that you're going to be mentoring, and they're going to be then mentoring, just goes on and on.
Andy, because this is the beauty of this work is that we work together in community. We can piece together the puzzle.
Yes.
About I'll do this part. You'll do, if you want to, if you're willing to do this and you agree to, we can make this all work as, and that's where again a community comes in around doing this work, right?
Yeah.
And so if you decide or you feel the calling to come into this work, the big U, that there are people here to support you, and that you don't have to do it alone, because people have gone before you to do this work, and you can learn.
And there's more people now. Like when you started, you were the only one, probably in that whole peninsula. And so there's more people now.
Yeah.
It's not that they're all doing stuff. People are afraid to come out, but there's a lot of people out with this interest. Not as much that are needed. Like we have a lot more need than there are people doing it, and a lot less people actually doing it because they're afraid to get out. But I think if by finding people like Jeremy and Tracy and there's so many people on a local level and also international level. I think that sounds so dramatic. Is there some other way to people in different countries helping each other out? It really is that simple. People really want to help each other, especially in this role. There's all kinds of Facebook group guys out there for end-of-life doulas in all kinds of countries, and people talking about this from so many angles. So Jeremy, thank you so much for coming. You're one of the few men. We have men. I think the third person that I worked with in 2010 was a retired chaplain who was he had a big construction company, and he retired from that. He retired from his church, and he was my first man that I worked with. And I've always had men come, and so I know y'all are there. The last man that came to our school, he's a dump truck driver and just the kindest, sweetest guy. And you would think, dump truck driver? Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your background is at all. If you're drawn to this, you're drawn to this. It doesn't matter what you do for a living.
It's a calling.
It's a calling.
That's, for lack of a better word, I can't find another word for it, is that it's a calling from, I don't know if it's from spirit or from whatever is inside of us.
You're inspired. It's an inspiration.
Show up and to be here for the people in their most vulnerable states.
Yeah, and it's an honor. It is such an honor.
It's an honor and a privilege to work with families and with grief work, and to be that person that they feel safe with.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll have you back. I'll let y'all know when we're doing the panel, because I think it's important to hear from different people about, especially the money issue. But thank you, Jeremy, for coming. I'm so grateful to know you and know that you're still kicking strong, doing all kinds of new things. So take good care, Jeremy.
All right, you too. Thank you, Deanna.